What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Edgar. So, how can you deal with things that are bothering you in life? Better yet, how can you become unbothered? That's what I'm going to be covering in this video, but before I do that, I want to give you a quick disclaimer. Listen, y'all, we're human. The truth is that at some point, we're going to be bothered by less than ideal things that happen in our lives. There's really no way around that. If you drop an ice cream cone that you just bought, that's going to bother you. If your significant other breaks up with you, that's going to bother you. If you lose your job, that's really going to bother you. And of course they are. I mean, they suck. Nobody likes to experience those things because they cause pain and frustration. Or maybe if they're not even happening to you, but they're happening to those around you, you sympathize with them because you're human, so they bother you anyway. Now, obviously, some of the situations I mentioned are worse than others. I mean, losing an ice cream cone is nowhere near as bad as losing your source of income. One is a mild inconvenience, while the other can literally have life-changing consequences. But even though they're so different, if you think about it, our reaction to both often ends up being the same. Obviously, we get hit with that initial shock when we realize what happened because it sucks. We just lost something and nobody really likes losing. And maybe we have a little freak out moment and we say something like,
my day is ruined. My life sucks.
And then we let these things affect us so much that that statement starts to become true. We allow this singular moment to bother us so much that we just wallow in self-pity and feel bad for ourselves all day until the whole day really is just ruined. And in the case of losing a job, this can go on for months. Now, I've never been fired from a job, but I have suffered a lot of losses in life that I've allowed to disturb my peace and just bother me for probably way longer than they should have. Hours, days, probably even weeks at a time. And if you have too, then you know what I'm talking about. Actually, no, if you say you haven't, then you're lying, so you know what I'm talking about. The problem is, when we let these things bother us for so long, we inadvertently prevent ourselves from focusing on what really matters, finding a solution to the problem, or finding the next possible alternative. So how do we go about fixing this? There's a few things that I do in my day-to-day life that have helped tremendously with this. Some of you might think are a bit obvious, others are probably a bit more non-obvious, but they all work seriously well, so make sure you watch until the end. And with that, let's jump right into the first one, which is going to be focus on what you can control. Marcus Aurelius has this quote that says, there is never any need to get worked up about things you cannot control. Now, what does that mean? If there's really nothing you can do about a situation and you allow yourself to get worked up, there's still nothing you can gain out of that situation. But you stand to lose your composure, right? You lose your cool. So if you can't do anything about it, then your reaction shouldn't be to let it bother you. It should be to look for the next best alternative. Let me give you an example. Say you were planning a picnic for a week from now, but when that day comes, you show up to the park and it's raining. Do you decide that you're gonna go home and cry because your day is ruined? Or do you look for the next best solution, which might be to go back home and eat there, or maybe go out to eat because the day could still be enjoyable even if you can't be outside? The choice to me is obvious. So to summarize, if you can't control something, don't allow it to control you. Okay, tip number 2 is gonna be to develop healthy coping mechanisms. Before I get into what the healthy ones are, let's talk about what you shouldn't do. When something bothers you, you should not go out and buy a tub of ice cream and eat it all by yourself. When something bothers you, you should not lock yourself in your room and cry all day and not talk to anybody. Those things might help you eventually feel better about the things that are bothering you, but they're also gonna have negative consequences in other areas of your life. The things you should be doing are those that are gonna have a double positive, a dual benefit. For example, a lot of people like to work out. This is great because not only does it help you with your mental state, help with the things that are bothering you, but it also keeps you physically fit. Plus, since it's kind of taxing on the body, it de-stresses you, right? It lets out all this energy. I read this quote once, I don't remember where it was or who said it, but it says something along the lines of, to master the mind, you must first wear out the body. And I think there's some truth to that, not really because I've done research on it, but because of my own personal experience. One thing I like to do a lot is run. Mostly because it sucks. You get to the point where you're fatigued, your legs hurt, maybe your shoulders hurt from swinging your arms. But when you're dealing with something and you put yourself in a situation like that, it shifts your focus away from the situation that you're dealing with and into the pain that you're physically feeling. But once you're done, you feel great because it's good for your cardiovascular system and it's good for your overall health. But while I do think that everybody should exercise in some capacity, not every coping mechanism has to be working out. There's actually lots of great hobbies out there that help with things like this. Two that I really enjoy are writing and drawing. Not only can these help with emotional regulation and just help you feel better when things are bothering you, but they also help improve creativity, so it's a win-win situation again. The truth is, even video games can be a healthy coping mechanism as long as you're not doing it too much. Anyway, I don't need to go into all the different hobbies. You guys know what hobbies are, you know what you like to do, so find something that has a dual positive and do that. Okay, tip number 3 is going to be to practice gratitude. Oh, Edgar, that one's so obvious. Maybe, but I mean, the reality is that there's something special, just something so unique about taking the time out of your day to practice gratitude and practice being grateful for the things that are going well in your life. And it's also something that is super accessible to everyone, right? Anybody could do it. You can just set some time aside to reflect on the good things going on, or you can journal. Personally, I prefer to journal because it allows me to outline things that I want to talk through a bit easier. And it also creates kind of this like book of happy notes that you can look back on whenever you're feeling down. So maybe if you feel like you don't have anything to be grateful for in that moment, you can look back at these things that you were grateful for once, and they can help you feel better in the current situation. Anyway, the reason why this works is because it shifts your attention from all the negativity going on into the positive. And when your primary focus is things that you should be grateful for, all the negativity, all the things that are bothering you, just don't seem as important. All right, this is where we get into those things that are maybe not so obvious, because tip number 4 is self-awareness. Now, what I mean by this is that when something bothers you, I want you to sit with yourself and figure out, why does this thing upset me? When this happens, why do I react the way that I do? Now, the goal here is to help you understand your triggers. Now, I know triggers is kind of a controversial word in recent years, but we all have things that trigger us, right? When they happen, It pisses us off, we get upset, our day is ruined, blah blah blah. Anyway, when you understand your triggers, it has two benefits. It will help you avoid situations that you know will trigger you, and it will allow you to work on controlling your reactions to said triggers. This is another instance where I think journaling really helps, because when you talk about what you're doing on pen and paper, it separates you from the situation, and it allows you to really dissect the situation and talk yourself through why you feel the way you do, what the situation was, what caused it, how you reacted to it. And then you can outline different things you can try to help you react in a different way going forward. And then it also serves as a reference sheet for those situations later on. Anyway, on kind of a side note, self-awareness is also just super helpful for all areas of life. So if you've never taken the time to just reflect on who you are and the things that upset you, the things that make you happy, just everything about what makes you you, then you should definitely do it, because it's super beneficial. Okay, tip number 5 is going to be to realize that all challenges in life lead to growth. Maybe they'll help you build resilience. Maybe they'll help you learn something. The truth is, everything in life is going to be a learning opportunity, whether you think it is or not. Let's go back to that picnic example for a second. If you tried to plan a picnic and you showed up on that day and it was raining, then maybe in the future you realize that you shouldn't just plan it on some random Saturday. You should look at the weather app and figure out, is this Saturday going to work? Now maybe that seems trivial, but that is a learning situation in that scenario. Let me give you another example. I recently made a series about 9 to 5s where I covered like the good, the bad, and whatnot. It's actually a great set of videos. I recommend you go watch it. But one of the videos was about the positive side of 9 to 5s. And in that video, I talked about how jobs basically pay you to learn. Now after I posted it, a subscriber commented and said that he's never had a job where he had to learn something. Most of his jobs involved him teaching or training others. And my immediate response wasn't, oh, maybe he just had a shitty job that he didn't learn anything in. No, my response was actually, maybe what you were meant to learn was how to train others or how to communicate with others better. Because that is something that you learn from having to train and teach others. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this one can be kind of difficult because it requires you to have a positive mindset about everything, about every situation that you're in. And I know that's not easy, especially when it's bothering you and when you're already upset about it. But in hindsight, you can learn something from every situation. So as long as you try to focus on the learning opportunities, the negativity will not bother you as much. As much as you put into practice everything that I just said, there will come a point where something unexpected happens and it just upsets you. And that's okay. Sometimes the quickest way through an upsetting situation is to allow yourself to process the feelings. Acknowledge your emotions, embrace any sadness you're feeling, and cry if you have to. Because the truth is that there's nothing wrong with having negative feelings or being bothered by situations that are shitty. But the point I'm trying to get across here is that not every situation calls for that. Sometimes we're the ones that amplify a situation and turn it into way more than it is and let it bother us way more than it has to. So if I had to give you one final tip, it would be that whatever the situation is, pause before you react. Pausing allows you to better understand the situation and how you ended up there, which in turn allows you to better control how you react to that situation and how much it affects you. Let me tell you one more story. So in October of last year, I had to take a work trip to a nearby city. Well, nearby is relative, right? It was like 2 hours away, 130 miles. Anyway, I had to be there at 7 a.m. and since I had a 2-hour drive, I left here at 5 a.m., which means my day really started at 4 a.m. I was there for a career fair, and by the time it wrapped up, it must have been like 1:30 already. And I still had to drive home. So as I'm driving back, I'm doing 70, which is the speed limit on that strip of highway. And, I'm just lost in thought because I'm tired, I'm ready to get home. At this point, I've already been working for 9 hours, right? So I'm driving and I don't notice all these cones going past me. And it turns out I'm in a construction zone, which means the speed limit was lowered to 55. Now, shortly after I entered the zone, I look down the road and I see a cop, which prompted me to look at my speedometer, which made me realize construction zone, 70 miles per hour. Uh-oh. So as you probably guessed, I passed the cop, he pulls off, pulls me over. And I got a pretty big ticket. It must have been something like $280. Not fun. Now, naturally, at first I was very upset about the situation. But after the cop let me go, I sat in my car for a second and just paused. I thought about how I ended up there, and the reality is, I was speeding. Yeah, maybe I was tired, I was a bit distracted, but I was speeding. So was the ticket justified? Yeah. Did I deserve it? Probably. So after I talked myself through all of that, then I just kind of laughed about the whole situation, said, oh well, and drove the rest of the way home. Of course, I still had to pay the ticket, but I really wasn't all that upset afterwards. And honestly, I was proud of myself for how I handled the situation because I used to have horrible emotional regulation. Believe it or not, as a kid, I was actually in counseling for anger management because I just couldn't control how I reacted to things that upset me. But as I got older, I started doing all the things that I mentioned in this video, and it's helped me out a ton. So hopefully it helps you too. Also, I'm always looking for new things to try, so if you have different practices that you use to not let things bother you, then I would love to hear about it in the comments. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, so if you enjoyed it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out this video next, and with that, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.